You gave her everything a man should, and that's why she left. You offered safety, peace, devotion. She smelled the comfort, and it sickened her. You called it love. She called it a lullaby before the soul dies. She wasn't running from danger. She was running from the man who tried to keep her warm. You don't remember the exact moment, but there was a look, a flicker, a hunger. She stayed longer when you were cruel, not when you were kind. She kissed the wound, not the healer. She laughed when your chaos leaked through your calm. What do you think she saw in you, the man who built the house? No, she saw the storm chained in your ribs, and she whispered to it when you were asleep. You believed she wanted the protector, but she craved the destroyer, the one who doesn't ask, the one who burns certainty. You were the shelter. She wanted the wind that shattered it. Now she's gone, but something stayed, and it breathes beside you, even when you're alone. You think of love as something warm, don't you? Something that holds, something that heals. But what if she never wanted to be healed? What if her soul wasn't reaching toward peace, but toward the edge, the place where things unravel, where masks fall, where fire eats the structure you tried to build around her? You offered her calm, and she heard a cage. You offered her protection, and she felt her hunger begin to rot, because you mistook her chaos for a wound, and she mistook your safety for a tomb. There is a look women give men who don't understand, a smile that is too still, a softness that is full of retreat. You saw it, you felt it. She let you speak, she let you give, she let you try. But her spirit was elsewhere, circling something feral, something raw. The truth is, she never loved the man who stood still. She loved the man who shattered, the man who bled, the man who forgot to ask permission and instead let the animal in him speak the language her soul recognized, the language of storms. You thought she needed peace, but peace is not what the siren sings for. She calls to the ship that dares to crash, the one that does not hold course, the one that knows death is coming and sails toward it anyway. You were proud of being the good man, the man who does not harm, but you misunderstood the harm she feared. It was not your anger, it was your emptiness, your obedience, your vanishing pulse beneath all your virtue. You were her shelter, and that's why she left. She needed the storm. She needed the place where her reflection breaks, where the masks she wears for the world no longer hold. She didn't want to be adored. She wanted to be exposed, not by cruelty, but by intensity, not by logic, but by the myth in you that you abandoned when you chose to be safe. She was never looking for comfort. She was looking for her own shadow, and you erased it every time you softened, every time you held her without force, every time you listened without hunger, every time you gave without mystery. You became invisible to the part of her that longs to be devoured, not decorated. And the more you gave, the more she disappeared. Do you remember when she looked at you differently, when her pupils widened, not with affection, but with curiosity? It wasn't when you told her what she meant to you. It was when you stopped explaining, when you said something that startled even you, when you broke the rhythm of your role and something ancient stepped forward in your voice. That was the man she wanted. Not you, but the fragment of you that still remembered how to tear the world open with a stare. She wants fire, not warmth, destruction, not rescue, not because she is cruel, but because she is dying of politeness, of being cherished, of being worshipped. Every time you made her feel safe, a part of her screamed. She didn't come to you for safety. She came to you for transformation, and you mistook that as a need to soothe. She didn't need to be held. She needed to be broken open, and you were too careful to ever crack her mask. So she left, but not because you failed, because you succeeded. You gave her the dream, the house, the language. the stability, and she withered inside it. Not because it wasn't beautiful, but because it was whole, and she is not seeking wholeness. She is seeking the tremor, the tremble, the threshold. There is a place in a woman where the mother, the whore, the witch, and the child live together. That place cannot be reached through love alone. It can only be reached through myth, through madness, through the touch that says, I will not protect you from yourself. You didn't speak to that place. You praised her. You soothed her. You listened. You agreed. But she didn't want a mirror. She wanted a knife. Not a knife of violence, a knife of vision, the kind that cuts through persona, that ruins performance, that calls her out not by judgment, but by power. And power is not in kindness. It is in presence, in stillness, in danger, not harm, danger. The danger of being seen, being known, being hunted by the part of you that doesn't ask what she wants because it already knows. The truth, she doesn't want to be loved. She wants to be claimed, not owned, but met. Entirely, without apology, without hesitation, without the armor of being a good man. You think she left you because you were wrong, but she left because you were right in the way the world taught you to be, and it killed her desire. She didn't come to find the end of herself in you. She came to disappear, to dissolve into something larger than either of you. You made her feel safe, but what she craved was the danger of awakening, of remembering the serpent in her spine, and you refused to hiss. You watched her walk away. You still wonder why. But deep down, something in you knows, something that cannot speak in words. A growl, a silence, a feeling in your chest that rises only when everything else falls. That was the part she loved. That was the storm she wanted. And you kept it hidden behind your careful sentences, behind your affection, behind your loyalty. She doesn't want your loyalty. She wants your hunger, the kind that doesn't flinch when she bares her fangs, the kind that doesn't retreat when she becomes the storm herself. She doesn't want the man who fears her chaos. She wants the man who answers it. And now, you sit alone, not weaker, not smaller, but quieter. Something has changed. A part of you has started to stir, a part that no longer begs to be understood, that no longer seeks peace, that no longer calls her name. You are beginning to feel it. The pulse of something old, something that doesn't bow, something that doesn't ask. It was never about her. It was about the storm in you she tried to summon, and you silenced it in the name of love. But it's waking now, and it does not forgive. It does not explain. It only waits, like thunder under skin. There is a wound in her that no kindness can touch. Not because it is too deep, but because it is too alive. You tried to dress it in comfort, to wrap it in soft intentions. But wounds like that do not want to close. They want to speak, to burn, to dance in the lightning, not heal beneath blankets of affection. She showed it to you once, not directly, but in the way she said nothing when everything inside her screamed. And you responded the only way you knew, how you tried to make her feel better. But she didn't want better. She wanted real. That wound, it is older than her. It is not hers alone. It is the archetype bleeding through her skin. The scream of every woman who played the role too well, wore the smile too long, obeyed the narrative too deeply. She never said it, but she wanted to be ruined, not in cruelty, but in revelation. She longed for someone who would not pity her wound, but walk straight into it, barefoot, unflinching, unholy. You tiptoed around it, you feared it, and in doing so, you became invisible to the part of her that was real. There are places in the soul that cannot be touched by soft hands. Only fire reaches there, only danger, only the gaze that does not blink when she descends into madness. You offered her stability. She needed madness. She needed the mirror that shatters the narrative. Not because she is broken, but because she is still alive. And being alive in a world that asks you to perform is a kind of treason. And love, real love, is treason against the script. You kept trying to show her she was enough, but she didn't want to be enough. She wanted to fall apart, and you didn't let her. You tried to fix what was never broken. You tried to comfort what was never crying. You didn't see the truth she was testing you, not to see if you were safe, but to see if you were dangerous enough to follow her into the underworld. And you weren't. She craved a man who could meet her there, in the place where language dies, where names melt, where the masks of mother, lover, daughter, saint all collapse into dust. She wanted the man who could walk into that dark with her and not flinch, who could look into her chaos and not try to solve it, who could watch her burn and not reach for water. Not because he was cold, but because he understood the fire was the point. You tried to love her as she was, but she wasn't. She was becoming something wild, something mythic, something unbearable to the man who needs to be needed. She didn't want to be your purpose. She wanted to be your undoing. Not your destruction, your dismemberment. She wanted to see if you could die to who you thought you were, if you could let go of being her reason and become her reflection. And you failed, because you were too good, too giving, too afraid of the dark to follow her in. The woman you loved, she was not soft, she was not sweet. She was the archetype of the storm cloaked in skin, and she kept waiting for you to stop being the man who loved her and become the man who saw her. Not her face, not her body, not her roles, but the ancient, wild thing writhing underneath. You saw glimpses, didn't you, when her voice changed, when her eyes glinted with something you couldn't name. That was her truth, that was her soul. And you looked away. Do you understand what it means to be chosen by the storm? It's not a reward, it's not a romance, it's a call to die, to drop everything you were told a man should be, and become the thing that knows how to lose everything without begging. You weren't ready. You loved her too much to face her. Because love, real love, doesn't flinch when the mask falls. It doesn't ask her to stay beautiful. It doesn't ask her to stay sane. You asked her to stay sane. You wanted her to be the dream, but she was becoming the nightmare, not the horror kind, but the holy kind. The kind that tears veils. The kind that doesn't stop at the surface. The kind that rips through lineage and culture and myth and returns the woman to herself, not as someone's, but as something. She wasn't yours. She was the storm passing through you, and you thought you were the sky. You see, the wound was never hers alone. It mirrored yours. The hunger you buried under calm, the rage you softened with reason, the ache you covered in virtue. She smelled it, she tasted it, and for a moment, she believed you might bring it forth, that you might let yourself go mad with her, that you might leave the kingdom of logic and enter the temple of madness. But you stayed polite, and so she danced alone. It is easy to love a woman who smiles, easy to protect a woman who pleads, easy to worship a woman who stays small. But can you love the woman who breaks you, who doesn't ask, who shows up not as a partner, but as a force? Can you let her destroy the man you think you are, and call forth the one you've never dared to become? She didn't want you because you were safe. She wanted you because you were close to the edge. She saw something a flicker, a tremor, a crack, and she reached through it, hoping to pull out the myth in you. But you sealed it. You chose to stay the man, and she needed the monster, not the violent one, not the cruel one, the sacred one, the one who doesn't flinch when she turns wild, the one who doesn't blink when she loses form, The one who says nothing when her voice is no longer hers, but the voice of every woman who has ever burned inside a role. Now you're alone, but not because she left, because you never followed. She descended, and you stayed at the surface, explaining the storm instead of becoming it. There is still time, but not to get her back, to meet yourself where she once waited. You never understood why she lingered when you were torn, why she touched you more when you were unraveling, why her eyes softened when your composure cracked. You mistook it for mercy, but it was recognition. In your chaos, she saw her own, not the performance, not the part of you polished for approval, but the jagged, aching hunger beneath the surface, the part of you that didn't ask, the part of you that couldn't be domesticated, the part you spent your life trying to bury under kindness, under roles, under control. She didn't want your control. She wanted what you feared about yourself. The storm you locked away because you thought being a good man meant being calm. You became the shelter because you were terrified of what the storm might do. But that storm, it was the only thing that could have touched her. You weren't rejected because you were weak. You were rejected because you refused to become dangerous. Not dangerous to her, dangerous to the illusion, to the mask, to the carefully rehearsed choreography of man and woman, protector and protected, giver and receiver. She didn't want your strength. She wanted your surrender, not to her, to the unknown. She wanted to see if you could step off the ledge, if you could lose form, if you could die before dying. That's what the storm is. It isn't rage, it isn't violence, it's the death of who you pretend to be. And in that death, something else emerges, something older, something archetypal. Not a man, not even a lover, but a force, a mirror, an initiation. That's what she was waiting for. And you stood still, like a statue sculpted from your own fear. She didn't want to be held. She wanted to be met, fully, without apology, without explanation, without that look in your eyes that asked, "Is this enough?" She didn't need enough. She needed everything, and you kept giving her pieces, polished pieces, predictable ones. She came to wake you, and instead, you fell asleep inside the role you thought she needed. You thought love meant shielding her, but she didn't come for the shield. She came for the sword, the one you buried when you learned that good men don't make women bleed. But what if she needed to bleed not in pain, but in release? What if she came to be undone, and you mistook it for a wound? What if every time she erupted, it was a ritual, and you broke the spell by trying to fix it? You were not her shelter. You were supposed to be her storm, not the chaos that harms, but the chaos that reveals, that strips, that devours masks and leaves only essence. You had it once, in moments, in the way you looked at her before you spoke, in the way you moved when you forgot to be careful, in the silence that fell when both of you stopped pretending to be human and started remembering the beast that shaped you. She never wanted the nice version of you. She wanted the myth, the man who doesn't explain, the man who doesn't soften his stare, the man who walks into her fire and says nothing because he knows it's not his to understand, only to witness, only to burn with, only to mirror. You were her storm, once, briefly. You remember the night, the sound of your voice when you didn't try to be gentle, the way she trembled, not in fear, but in hunger. That was the man she came for, the one who could pierce through every word and find the secret she didn't know she was hiding, the one who didn't look away when she became monstrous, the one who didn't flinch when her beauty turned to shadow. She wanted to disappear, and she wanted to know if you would follow, not to pull her back, but to vanish with her into the myth, into the dark, into the storm that neither of you could name. And instead, you reached for her hand with an apology, with understanding, with love, and she pulled away not because she didn't want love, but because love that seeks to calm the storm is not love. It's fear wearing affection's mask. The irony, you were the storm, always. But you tried to be her shelter, and the more you tried, the more she faded, until the only thing left between you was silence. Not the sacred kind, but the dead kind. The kind where truth is no longer welcome, and everything is polite, predictable, terminal. She didn't want a future. She wanted an eruption. She wanted the moment when time stops, when breath holds, when the self shatters, when form dissolves and something ancient walks through the space where two people used to stand. You felt it once, didn't you? That moment, that glance, that madness, that unbearable aliveness. That's where she lives. That's what she's drawn to. That's what she waits for in men. And you gave her everything except that. You wanted to be enough, but she was never asking for enough. She was asking for everything you repressed. Your hunger, your death, your God. The pieces you left behind when you decided to become lovable. But she never wanted lovable. She wanted the thing that stands at the edge of the world and does not blink. And now, she's gone. But you still hear it, don't you? That whisper, that storm, that echo of a glance that didn't ask for permission. It didn't leave with her. It waits, not in another woman, not in another chance, but in the part of you that still remembers what you were before the world told you how to love, before you learned to soften, to yield, to hold back, before you became good. There is a storm in you, and it knows her name, not the name she gave you, not the one she answers to in daylight, but the name she whispered when no one else was listening, the one that cracked in her throat, the one that sounded like longing and fire and death. She came for that name, and you stayed nameless, not because you didn't love her, but because you were afraid to be seen. The storm is still here, but this time, it no longer comes to take her back. It comes to take you. She was never meant to stay. She was only the mirror, the messenger, the flame that kissed your edges and asked, without speaking, if you would burn. Now there is no question left. No answer coming. Only the sound of rain without sky. Only the scent of thunder where your name used to be. The shelter is quiet, but the storm is awake, and it waits for no one.